fake crying! You are fake crying! That is not real! Oh my god!
I apologize for a lot of things that I've done or said in this video, so I'm gonna start with all the racism. I made the decision to play stereotypes of black people or Asian people or Mexicans or pretty much every race. I made that decision. I said, oh, this is funny.
Quote, as I scrolled through my timeline, I saw thousands of Shane Dawson is racist and Shane Dawson hates black people tweets, and each one was like a dagger in my heart. Margaret Cho wasn't considered a racist for making jokes about Asians and their stereotypes because that's what she grew up with. And the same goes for me. I hate to break this to you, Shane, but maybe she's not considered a racist because she's actually Asian.
Shane YAW.
In 2020, Shane Dawson was literally party to one of the most successful cancellations of all time. After years of offensive content and skits in which he would play a character named Shanaynay and also would do blackface in multiple instances, saying the N-word multiple times, Shane Dawson would finally meet his match in cancellation. That's not even to mention some of the behaviors he exhibited around minors at the time, which, to say the least, are weird and disturbing. But today we're not going to be talking about that. We're back in 2015, near the height of Shane's career, in my opinion. 2015 was a big year for him, and I think around that era, 2015, 2016, was a big era for YouTubers in general as well. Does anybody else remember when YouTubers actually released books? And I'm talking about physical books. YouTuber books are worse than you remember, and Shane Dawson's I Hate MySelfie is no exception to that at all. 2015, in comparison to 2020, was just a great time for Shane. He had enjoyed lots of success from his skits, from his comedy, and now he was branching out. YouTubers were starting to be seen as more of actual celebrity somewhat. He had enjoyed lots of success. Not only had he been dipping into new content, like making music videos, and he also came out as bisexual in 2015. Lots of things happening. He also made a movie as part of a reality show called The Chair, in which two directors competed. So to cut a long story short, Shane ended up winning and basically robbing a very talented young director because Shane essentially rigged the poll by having his fans swarm the event. And Not Cool now is just known as a utterly terrible movie. The reviews on Google are literally 1.4 stars. And while some Shane fans will say, oh, it's still good, let's be honest, looking back, even if you were a Shane fan back in 2015, you're probably an adult now like me. And the movie is utterly offensive. It has basically no coherent plot. It's kind of insane that Shane thought his first film could be a self-insert, and there's so many good videos on this topic as well. But to get back to the book, I Hate MySelfie was published in 2015, around the same time. It's described as a book containing a collection of essays describing Shane Dawson's life. And I just think really the title of the book just exudes the essence of 2015. And for some reason, literally every book on the shelf, it's a New York Times bestseller. And apparently, according to the Wikipedia page, might actually be deserving that title because apparently it sold 89,000 copies in 2015. So, hey, great job. We're going to be looking at this book, reviewing it. Let's just say I have my ways and I managed to get a copy without directly supporting Shane. But before I get all the way into it, thank you so much for watching. My name is Justin Jordan. I'm getting more into my nostalgia bag recently, so I decided to do this. But this is a commentary channel, and I just do commentary on things. If you like this video, leave a comment down below on what you want to see next. Leave a little smash that like button, and subscribe. Let's just go through this pain and suffering together. So just to immediately jump to the intro of the book, because this really just got me, quote, this book is dedicated to my hilarious and caring mother. Thank you for giving me so much unconditional love, and fuck you for giving me your fat arms and wonky eye. What a great way to start a best-selling book. Page 10 is also just a mess. This is kind of Shane describing, his foreword, so I think it was just really funny. Hi, I'm Shane Dawson. Some of you might know me from my videos on the internet. Some of you might know me from that movie I directed entitled Not Cool. And some of you might know me as the guy you saw on the cover of the book, who has an incredibly punchable face. I'm all of those things and more. I also have an incredibly punchable body, but none of you will ever get to see that. Love that little intro, Shane. I assure you, though, nobody knows you from that movie you directed entitled Not Cool. And if they do, they're not coming to get a book from you. No shade. For the record, I don't really hate myself, but I do hate the way I portray myself online. Hence, my selfie. See what I did there? Online, I'm this loud, outrageous, confident guy who acts like nothing bothers him, and he has a whole world at his fingertips. In reality, I'm a shy, quiet guy who would rather spend his nights lying in bed watching Netflix than being a valuable member of society. Interesting. In this book, you'll get to see the real me, not the me you get to see on YouTube. You will get to know what's really in my head, and I'm warning you, it's not pretty. It's a twisted lane of self-hatred, sadness, and lots of repressed anger. toward every person who's ever hurt me. Enjoy. And I think that's just a perfect description of this book. Like, while a lot of these stories are very telling about Shane's like psyche, in my opinion, and you can tell he actually wrote this book. For some reason, I was expecting like a ghostwritten kind of like book, but you can tell he actually wrote this. As we'll see, a lot of the stories are just like, there's no way this came from any place except Shane Dawson's imagination. So chapter 1, entitled My Destiny, is solely dedicated to his experience at a Supercuts hair salon in 2006 with a woman named Destiny, and Shane describes his fear at the thought of getting a haircut. Quote, "Just the thought of going to a salon, barber, and having a stranger touch my head while asking me personal questions about my life makes my nerves shoot through the roof. It's the same feeling a wicker chair gets when a circa 2006 Kelly Clarkson takes a seat. Tense. But sometimes you have to bite the bullet and let Kelly Clarkson sit on your face." Just love that we're starting this book fat-shaming Kelly Clarkson. That's kind of just a taste of the humor that's present throughout the whole book. But I guess the call was coming from the house because Shane definitely describes lots of his struggles with his own weight issues as we'll get further into the book. But regardless, Shane enters the Supercut store, and I just have to read this dialogue because there is no way this is a real conversation. "Destiny, so what do you want? Me. For you to tell me that you are just another sassy front desk person and Destiny is still in the back screaming at her baby daddy." But regardless, Shane conquers his fears and ends up getting a haircut. There is kind of a minor Shane crash out because Destiny messes up his hair a little bit. "Destiny, I think I took a little bit too much off the back. I might even have to get it out. Are you okay with that?" "Am I okay with that? Are you kidding me? You barely GED achieving tacky dress snaggletooth." No, this was not okay. But Shane would end up getting a lovely haircut, and that's basically the essence of the chapter. Lots of stories, probably under the lens of Shane, and I think very dramatized. I think there's no way that he actually said these things to her, with a tinge of misogyny and his typical offensive humor that you find on YouTube. It's just interesting seeing this written in a literary form. The thought that an editor had to look over this and pick out words and send this to the publishers is just... it just fills me with joy in my heart. So for the next chapters, my summarization is going to be a little bit faster because I value your time, you value my time. We understand each other here. So the next chapter is called High School Musical. So Shane and his friend Tara join in a high school musical. "Tara, we should try out for the musical." "Me? What? Why? Can't we just pretend that we have Tourette's and go through the Burger King drive-thru again?" Shane ends up singing Kelly Clarkson for the audition, and his friend is casted a second lead, but he gets the role of fat tourist, and his only line is basically, "Who's hungry?" So a drama teacher ends up running it like the Navy, and Patty, someone I hadn't mentioned before, who's basically the stereotypically good drama kid, ends up almost having a breakdown on the night of the show. "Patty, I got nervous last night and ate my brother's entire cake. I feel so fat and nothing is fitting. Everyone's gonna laugh at me and everyone's taking pictures and video. I'm gonna look like a fat pig." "Me? You don't look fat, especially next to me. If you want, I can stand next to you during the cast photo. I could even eat a whole cake first. I skipped my after lunch snack, so I can probably take down a cake." So the next chapter, entitled My First Two Kisses, describes Shane's first two kisses. One was with one of his roommate's friends, who he refers to as the Canadian, and the second was for a YouTube video. And the chapter was chock full of his, type of offensive comedy. But I just found this first paragraph really interesting given his current trajectory. Quote, "When I tell people my first relationship was when I was 21, they assume I grew up Amish. They also assume I'm an insanely repressed, closeted homosexual. Considering I'm only 26, there's still plenty of time for me to explore my gay side. I could even picture myself at age 50, getting my balls stepped on by a guy wearing a leather mask and screaming expletives in my face." Shane, maybe you did predict the future here because now it's you, Ryland, and, you're just basically a family vlogger. I just think this is really funny. It's just funny that anybody believed that Shane was straight. I don't know, it was just giving queer-coded to me, and nobody can ever convince me that the internet fully believed that this man was straight and had multiple girlfriends online. What? So that chapter was just weird, and it kind of introduces something that will be a reoccurring theme throughout the book. Shane is insanely insecure and makes that very apparent throughout a lot of the chapters in this book. He literally, for the YouTube kiss, he just gets so worried about how he's perceived, especially during kissing scenes. And a lot of the stories end up mentioning this, which is just interesting. And the next chapter, I think, is just insanely weird looking back. It's called The Original Catfish. So in 9th grade, Shane was assigned a class project with a group of who he describes as surfer boys. Here's how he directly describes them. Surfer kids who had a collective IQ of 10 and a collective STD score of everything. And after basically getting bullied by the kids for being fat, he devises a plan to catfish them, ultimately getting one of them to send him pictures. I'm just saying pictures, but you can grasp what I mean by pictures. Shane literally then prints out the picture that he's catfished this boy to get in case he was bullied again, and brings it to school, by the way. Did nobody else in the house see that he was printing out a picture of someone's, like, here's what he says, quote, "I had his adolescence in the palm of my hand, and I could easily crush it if I wanted to. I decided to just print out one of the pictures and put it in my backpack. That way, if he said something mean to me, I could whip it out and show it to everybody and get my sweet, shriveled revenge." This is just really unhinged behavior and really, like, it's giving crazy, I'm sorry. Even for a 9th grader to do this, like, the level of manipulation. Also, not to mention I'm pretty sure this is illegal, but, you know, a lot of the stuff in this story is. 2002 Shane must have been way more unhinged than 2015 Shane, because, oh my God. But ultimately, he decides not to print out these pictures because he has too big of a heart. I actually believe this one somewhat because this is just too crazy for me to see this as like some sort of joke he devised in his head. The way he tries to make himself seem like a good person because, you know, I printed out the picture, I had it on the way, but I actually didn't use it. So I had too big of a heart. Like, just odd behavior. You know, most of us have been bullied. I've been bullied, but I never thought of, you know, doing that to somebody. I think there's layers to the situation, but regardless, let's move on to the next chapter because, yeah. Between Hollywood and an abortion clinic. In this chapter, Shane describes how he fell victim to one of those acting scams. If you've ever kind of wanted to be in like that creative field or like wanted to be a child actor, you kind of know the vibe I'm talking about. I'm talking about like those ads that are like, oh, do you want to be an actor that you hear on the radio? But apparently this lady in the mall came up to him and said he had a good face for acting, whatever. He ends up taking lessons and he claims that he maxed out his mom's credit cards and paid $3,000 for these acting lessons. Apparently the lessons were right next to an abortion clinic. And after confronting the head person of the acting, whatever it is, like basically the scam, the person told him that Shane would be connected to an agent and he got his money back, which this whole story just reads really fake to me because it's just too on the nose. The big thing that's making me think that this whole story is fake is the fact that he's getting his money back. There's no way in hell this scam would give you your money back just because you confronted them. Like, you would probably have to get the police involved before they would give you your money back. Between Denny's and death. And this chapter is honestly really heartfelt and sad, and despite having his typically immature or laden humor, this is one of the chapters I feel like that actually is coming from the heart. And although he tries to mask like the seriousness and the gravity of the situation, he ultimately can't. Shane describes being at Denny's when he got news that his grandmother had fallen into a coma and only had a few days to live. She was gone. I broke down into tears and had to leave the room. I did the only thing I knew to do, vlog. I went to the bathroom and took out my iPhone and started talking to it. I talked about how scared I was to lose her, how mad I was at God for doing this. And after a few days later, he got a call. His grandmother had regained consciousness, but unfortunately, this would be like their last moments together. And honestly, to me, this chapter was one of the most endearing and heartfelt chapters. Even though he really, like, again, tries to mask it, I just really think it came out in this chapter. Like, honestly, I actually liked this one, even though there was, like, you know, some of his typical offensive humor. I think if the whole book was this and not just him trying to be the most offensive and crazy person possible, it may have been a tolerable book. My birthday suit. In this chapter, Shane describes some of his body issues. He states that he lost a lot of weight and had a lot of loose skin. And so to deal with this issue, as he perceived it, Shane thought it was a good idea to use one of his mom's swimsuits to cinch in some of the extra skin. So this only became a problem when Shane went to an amusement park with his friends. And while they were going through security, apparently, like, I guess the swimsuit bottom had like metal hoops on it. And this actually set the metal detectors off. And after being frisked, he was exposed. Here's what the security guard said. "Oh my God, you were in a woman's swimsuit? You were kinky, ain't you?" said the security guard upon the realization. Internet famous. In this chapter, Shane describes several moments when he was recognized in public, and it's kind of just a compilation of like several insane stories. Apparently he was recognized when he had a physical. Doctor, hey, where's your wig? I didn't recognize you. Doctor, hey, do Shanaynay. I'm just laughing like very hard at the idea that a doctor would ask Shane to do Shanaynay. Like a doctor of medicine is like, this might have happened, but it's just so funny. And then Shane also describes one time that there was basically a riot at VidCon because he was so popular. 3 security guards. Oh, and this quote just really stood out to me as like utterly insane. 3 security guards. I'm a YouTuber, not Obama. I make dumb videos on the internet and teach kids about sex. Oh, that's not. Well, I guess that would come back to bite him in the future. But apparently a 12-year-old girl thought Shane was ugly and he literally had to get like validation from his girlfriend to feel better about himself. 12-year-old, I thought you'd be hotter in person. You're kind of ugly. LOL. How to survive a horror movie. In this chapter, Shane describes his obsession with horror movies, and if you've watched him, I think this is something that he kind of discusses a lot. I think I'm thinking of like the Ghost Squad kind of era, but like he definitely talked about horror movies a lot, but regardless, he apparently played this game with his friends, which I thought was weird and I had to share. Every time my friends would come over, I would force them to play the Scream game. Basically, it was me chasing them with a knife and them having to defend themselves with whatever household items were around. Very interesting look into Shane's psyche. Luckily for Shane, he would get the opportunity to star in this horror movie that he loved, but again, he was very insecure about a kiss scene that he had to perform, and this becomes like a lot of the chapter is dedicated to him worrying about the kiss scene and how he's perceived and how he's kind of like, he's very worried about kiss scenes going well, which I think is just interesting, not necessarily given his trajectory, because like, although like in this era, it seems like he was pretending to be straight, side note, but like interesting to think about the fact that this like book came out like in 2015, the same year in which he would actually come out as bisexual. So I just thought it was interesting. I guess when he was writing this, maybe in 2014, he still kind of was under this impression that he would be seen as straight. Like he didn't know he was gonna come out yet. The mean girl gets fat. So Shane worked at a weight loss center. And I know, Shane worked at a weight loss center. Apparently he was selling like packages to clients as like a salesperson there. But apparently one day the mean girl named Lacey, who used to fat shame him in high school, walked in. As she took the health sheet out of my hand, we locked eyes. I turned white as a ghost. I knew Lacey. Instantly had a flashback to 2 years prior when I was sitting in my high school biology class, passing back a stack of tests to the girl behind me. It was Lacey. She was thin, beautiful, and everything that terrified me about women. She was a cheerleader with a 4.0 grade average and more experience than the sex ed teacher. And then Shane goes to the back room to tell his coworker, Mag, what happened, and this is how she allegedly reacts. Mag, she was a hot cheerleader. Wow, did she eat the mascot? Okay. And despite, like, originally kind of concocting this plan to actually not have her lose weight, Shane listens to Lacey about her story and kind of how she sank into a depression and how her life had fallen into disarray. And then Shane eventually basically is like, hey, it's actually me. Lacey apparently blocked out all of her high school memories because it was just such a traumatic time for her and like didn't even remember how she treated him in high school. Oh, and Shane actually seems like he had a little bit of growth moment at the end of this chapter. Quote, I was upset that she didn't remember how horribly she treated me, but I guess I never thought about her reasons for doing so. She must have been dealing with a lot of issues that made her take her anger out on me. And it doesn't make it right, but it makes it slightly understandable. Girl Space Friends. When I was researching for this book, before I found it, this chapter was discussed a lot on Reddit because it's weird. And I'm gonna have to use a lot of abbreviations and kind of misnomers, if you get what I mean, because Shane is the king of oversharing in this chapter. Shane says he always felt different from other boys. Quote, I'm not really what most would consider a manly man. Hell, I don't even really consider myself a man at all. I'm more of a woman with man parts. Because my brain and heart skew more feminine, I was always surrounded by girls' friends. Yes, that space was intentional. I never had a girlfriend until I was in my early 20s, but until then, I had an ever-changing collection of girl space friends. It's given Queen. So apparently his first girlfriend was named Kaylee, and they met at 6, and he speculates the reason that their friendship ended is because, let's just say he tried to punch her because he wanted to see if it hurt as bad as a punch to the balls. This is kind of just an introduction to how weird he gets as it pertains to like other people's parts and just, yeah, if this is true and this is the behavior he engaged in as a child, it kind of explains some of his later behavior, I guess. I met my next girl space friend when I was 11 years old, and her name was Sarah. She was a little more experimental than Kaylee, which is why I think we got along. A punch to her
Nunu
was ever out of the question. I'm pretty sure she even let me finger once. It was more to just see what was in there. I was convinced that women had hidden jewels inside of them. Oh my god, just weird. I think this chapter also shines a light onto some of his friendship patterns, because this is also part of the chapter. I can't stand judgmental people. The second someone lifts their eyebrow at a situation, I cut them out of my life. I like to live in a world where people can be whoever they want to be and say whatever they want to say. Sounds like he wants to be around a bunch of enablers, which given like his cancellation, I think this is just very interesting. Speed run because I'm getting tired and I'm sure you are as well. My strange addictions. Shane describes how he was addicted to food and also diet culture. Apparently he used to eat whole packs of Oreos, and he almost ended up in a coma by eating so many packets of Splenda, saying he ate over like 250 packets of Splenda in one case. YouTube got me fired. Shane gets fired from his job at a weight loss center that he'd described in several chapters because apparently he vlogged at work, and even the coworkers who were in the vlog got fired as well, which I think is just also insane and kind of speaks to the fact that like YouTube was not really like social media was not really normalized at this time. Astral projection. Shane explains his insane dreams and kind of some of his experiences with astral projection. He stops doing it when he has a scary experience with what he perceives as an evil spirit. Kind of interesting to see Shane's spiritual tendencies, because he's a very spiritual person in a way, which is like, I don't know, I didn't expect that from someone who pretended to be Shanaynay and did blackface for a living for several years, but okay. Just a pretty face. Shane describes some of his struggles with having a more feminine face. I think one of the funniest parts of this chapter is when he describes going to the beach with his mom and someone literally mistakes him and his mom for being a lesbian couple. My leg twin. Shane describes how he had this habit of comparing his bodies to others, and one day he apparently saw a guest star on Disney on TV who he thought literally had the same legs as him, and once he kind of blew up on YouTube, they'd actually meet in real life. And to me, this kind of reads like a crush, because why were you going and meeting some random man and basically like inviting him out to eat with you? But, maybe I'm just being too judgmental here. But yeah, he ultimately leaves there early because he felt so insecure about his body compared to his twins. Shocktuber. This chapter I'm going to be a little bit more in-depth on because I think it's just more interesting to me. Shane seemed to reckon with some early allegations that let's be honest, they weren't really allegations. A lot of his early work was blatantly and really openly racist. He would say the N-word in front of his black employees as a joke. But regardless, he describes how he was called out on Twitter for it. Quote, as I scrolled through my timeline, I saw thousands of Shane Dawson is racist and Shane Dawson hates black people tweets, and each one was like a dagger in my heart. The angry mob started posting links to other videos I had done and pointing to every offensive joke I'd ever made. They started creating a narrative that I was a secret KKK member and I was out to brainwash the youth of America with my sick, racist comedy, which is ridiculous. I mean, to be honest, when you're looking at some of Shane Dawson's earlier work, I don't think it's that much of a stretch. Side tangent, but when I was introduced to Shane, it was kind of in the 2016 era, so he cooled down a little bit on his racism. The only time I heard about Shanaynay was when like some random other kids would be watching. I had no idea like how to comprehend that as a young child, because while I understood racism to a certain extent, to kind of just, I don't know, I just kind of didn't really think of it as like racist until his original cancellation, and then I was like, oh my god, my fave was actually really racist and honestly really problematic. And he also, I'm just going to read out this part because I think it's kind of insane. Shane really tries hard to excuse this type of behavior. I grew up in Long Beach, California, where we're famous for raising Snoop Dogg and having lots of stabbings. All my jokes, all my characters, all my points of view as a comedian were creating while living in that environment. I'm sure as I get older, I'll be influenced by new experiences, but for now, I still grab from that period in my life. Here's another quote from this like kind of paragraph. Margaret Cho wasn't considered a racist for making jokes about Asians and their stereotypes because that's what she grew up with. And the same goes for me. I hate to break this to you, Shane, but maybe she's not considered a racist because she's actually Asian and, she actually has experience of being an Asian person. But Shane actually continues to try to excuse his behavior by bringing up a story where apparently he did a skit and apparently his black friend defended him for this racist skit. My first time performing for an audience was in 10th grade. It was a sketch I wrote, and my drama teacher chose it to be performed in front of the entire 10th grade class. It was about a white kid who wanted to fit in with his black friends, so he tried everything he could think of to impress them. It was a sketch full of stereotypes into an all-white audience. It would probably have been received with crickets and uncomfortable silence, but to my diverse class, it was received with uproarious laughter and a standing ovation, and to get 10th graders to stand for anything is a huge victory. The day after the performance, one of my teachers, who was white, asked me if I thought the skit was racist. I was shocked. How could satire be considered racist? I hadn't said anything demeaning, I hadn't used words that were hurtful, and I sure as hell hadn't said I was superior to anyone. Luckily, I had a friend stick up for me and risked getting detention for doing so. My friend happened to be black. Friend, how was what he did racist? Teacher, he was showcasing stereotypes. He was encouraging people to laugh at African Americans and the way they act. Friend, but some of us do act like that. I'm sorry, this friend just seems fake, or like maybe the friend was also dealing with, some of us, we all have the coon chip activated for some parts of our lives, because Jesus Christ. I mean, I'm assuming for a teacher to basically call out Shane for this skit being racist, it had to be crazy. Teacher, well, that doesn't make it right. Friend, no, it makes it relatable. I know people act foolish and coon-like, and those people are ridiculous to me. Shane wasn't making fun of black people. He was making fun of a group of black people who act ridiculous. Teacher, well, I disagree. Friend, well, you're not black. You don't understand what it feels like for white people to walk around eggshells on us, scared to say anything that could be misconstrued as racist, making us feel like we should be treated with kid gloves because we can't take the fact that our skin is a different color and some people don't like us. I like laughing at what I relate to, and I like that a white person was doing it. It made me feel more part of the society and less like an outcast. It's just giving crickets because, oh my God, this just reads as so fake. Am I the only one who's just like, there's no way this is real? And Shane even addresses this. Now, I know it sounds like I'm making this conversation up. It's too perfect and too well crafted to be an actual conversation between a high school student and his teacher, but it really happened. I'm sure it did. My thing is, even if it did really happen, the fact that you have one black person agreeing with you doesn't mean that other black people can't be offended by what you were doing. And also, while he's talking about this one skit, would that same black friend be behind you while you were literally doing blackface and literally saying the N-word in your content? Like, come on, man. I've noticed in the book that, like, even though Shane is, like, trying to be very offensive and trying to be very, like, crazy, like, he's trying to, oh, I'm so crazy, da-da-da, I did all this crazy stuff, he also kind of wants to also be the hero in every, like, story and every iteration of this story, which I think is also just really funny. This is it. This is the last story. I'm so glad we made it this far. Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling excited? Because we're almost done, guys. Thank you so much. I know this was hard. So the last story describes, like, his prom night. Shane describes his group of misfits that he, like, hung out with at school, claiming that he was a leader. My group was made of misfits, and not in the fun comic book way, more in the rejected scraps of meat become baloney way. I would say I was the leader of the group, but that implies that we did stuff that required leading. We more or less just stood around and shared a family-sized bag of Doritos. So Shane says that he was asked to prom by a girl named Kelly, who he says was lesbian, and apparently her dad was actually paying for them to go because he really wanted her to go with a man for some reason, which is very early 2000s, God. But despite a few mishaps during the night, namely one of Kelly's friends having her period through her dress, and it being visible through her dress, Shane ended up having somewhat of a good night. God, that was a lot. And that was I Hate Myselfie. A glimpse into the mind of Shane and even his responses to controversy and criticism, which I think was really interesting. While I feel like a lot of the stories were, like, if I'm being honest, I don't necessarily think it was a totally bad book. Like, some of the stories I actually liked, namely, like, the stories where he actually got real and kind of didn't try to mask everything under this layer of, like, offensive and just outrageous comedy. I just think overall that this is just a really interesting snapshot into his life, kind of 2015, like, peak of his career. But a lot of the stories were also just really disturbing and disgusting, especially given some of his later behaviors, like the catfish story, the fact that he printed out a picture of his classmate just because they bullied him, like, which I'm not excusing bullying, but, like, I feel like that's deranged behavior. I also think My Girl Space Friends was a really, like, memorable moment and really interesting as well, but that's pretty much it for the book. Let me know what you thought if you want me to review other books, because Shane also did another book called It Gets Worse. But that's it from me. If you made it this far, consider hitting that subscribe button. But thank you so much for watching. Bye.